One way to think about self awareness is that self awareness is like our guide or our map. And we have to take time to prepare first and make sure that we understand our map, that we understand that the map is going to be able to guide us on our journey. The map is going to help us know which way to go and where the possible risks are and how to navigate the mountain as we're climbing it. And without that map, we run the risk of getting lost, of pushing too far too fast, or not being prepared for the challenges that we're going to face, or potentially even not making it to where we want to go, not being able to make it to the top of the mountain. We need to be able to both read and understand our map, or it's not going to be helpful on the journey. So we have to cultivate the practices that are going to allow us to understand and navigate both the map and the journey. So even if I have a map, if I don't know what it's telling me and I can't understand where the lines are and which direction is which and how to navigate that map, it's not going to help me very much as I'm performing, as I'm going up the mountain. Likewise, if I don't understand, even if I have the wisdom and knowledge and information and messages coming from my body on my performance journey, our bodies and our brains and ourselves, if we don't know how to really understand it and really how to navigate it well, then it's not going to provide us the guide and the support that we need on our performance journey. So as you think about self-awareness and the self-awareness practices that we're going to touch on in this course and the subsequent courses, I want you to think about them as the tools that are helping us learn how to understand our map, how to better read the messages that are coming to us that are going to help us enjoy our experience as we're going on the journey. And we are actually extremely lucky in that the human body is the most complex and sophisticated map that has ever been built. By learning about and tapping into our self awareness, our inner insights, our wisdom and intelligence, we can actually ensure that our journeys are more enjoyable. In fact, often the pain that we experience on our journeys and as we're performing the roles in our life comes from many of the challenges that we face that stems from our lack of self-awareness. They stem from the struggles and the issues that are getting in the way of our looking inward, our inability, our unwillingness to tap into our own knowing in order to create greater experiences, make better decisions, and overall live our lives better. So, what are some of the challenges? What are some of the things that are impacting our level of self awareness that are making it such that we maybe don't know how to read our map, our inner knowing as much as we would like to believe that we do? What are the things that are getting in the way? In order to identify or understand what some of those challenges are, we're going to do an exercise. And this is what we call the mirror, mirror on the wall exercise. And all of the details are in your workbook. And it's important that you go do this exercise. So I hope that you go and actually do this. But you need to find a mirror or a space that's quiet and comfortable where you can sit in front of a mirror without any distractions. And I want you to position yourself in front of the mirror at eye level. And before you start, just take a few deep breaths, relax your body and your mind, become present in the moment, and get focused on this activity. Get focused on paying attention to this activity. Then I want you to look at your reflection in the mirror. And I want you to just look at it without judgment or analysis. Just observe yourself as you are in this moment. Notice your facial expressions, your body posture, or any other physical aspects that catch your attention. Then you're going to do a series of reflection questions, and there's space in your workbook for you to capture some of your answers and insights as you're going through this experience. So you're going to first just look at those initial impressions. Then you're going to shift your focus inward and bring your attention to some inner sensations or emotions or thoughts that might be coming up as you're doing the activity. And then you're going to move into some self compassion, non judgment, do a little bit of reflecting and journaling, and then we're going to come back together at the end and we're going to talk about some of your experience. We're going to talk about what you experienced as part of that exercise and how that relates to many of the challenges that people have with actually engaging in self-awareness in the first place. So please, before you move on, go find a mirror. There's got to be one near you somewhere, and do this exercise. I look forward to continuing on and telling you kind of some of the results and the outcomes of your experience. Now, if you're watching this video, you should by now have completed the mirror mirror on the wall exercise. But I'm betting that there is a percentage of you, whether you will be willing to admit it later on or not, that thought that it sounded like a stupid exercise, and so you decided not to do it. Some of you maybe started it and got uncomfortable and decided, you know what, I'm gonna stop. I don't want to do it. Some of you maybe didn't even bother to really look at it all the way through and just moved on and decided that it wasn't really necessary. So why do we stop? Why did you stop? Why didn't you do the exercise? What was it about it that got in the way? What was it about it that caused you not to take the time to do it? And the question really is then, if we have this amazing map to guide and this guide in our lives, why don't we use it? What is it that's preventing us from having greater self-awareness? What are the challenges in our lives or in ourselves that come from not understanding or having greater self-awareness? What is the impact of not doing this? And what are the things that are getting in our way from taking the time to look in the mirror and see what comes up, to see what emotions we're experiencing or what feelings we're having? What is it that is getting in the way? So I want you to take a minute now, and I just want you to recognize all the experiences and things that are going on in your life right now. What are all of the things that are going on at work? What are the challenges? Maybe a new boss. Maybe you're short staffed. Maybe you're in the medical industry and you have tough patients, or maybe you just have tough customers in general. What's going on at home with your kids or your spouse or your marriage? What's going on with your friends, with your family? What's going on in your town, in your city, your state, your country, and maybe even in the whole world? What is it that you're working on? What is it that you're planning? What is it that you're thinking about? I want you to just take a moment and really appreciate all of the things that are on your mind, all of the things that are going on all of the time in your life that you're having to understand and make sense of. The truth is, in the world today, there are more things going on in our lives. There is more things coming at us on a daily basis than ever before. We are managing through information overload and so many challenges and things in our life at any given moment in time. And what happens is, and I like to call this the human condition, is that our heads experience things in our lives and we try to make sense of them and understand them and process them. And our hearts feel emotions that are associated with the things that we're encountering, the things that we love, the things that cause us stress, the things that frustrate us, the things that bring us joy. They feel these emotions. And our bodies ultimately hold on to all of these experiences. Quite literally, from a neuroscience perspective, our bodies are wired with these neural pathways, and our muscles and our skin and all of the elements of our body remember the experiences that we've had. They remember and encode the different experiences that have happened. And the more frequently those experiences happen, the stronger those neural pathways become. In fact, it's one of the reasons why we remember pain. It's why we know not to touch the stove after we've been burned once by it. We know how to catch a ball that's coming at us and we can react quickly without thinking about it because we have this muscle memory. We have this programmed into our bodies, and it's one of the things that makes our brains the most amazing map that you could ever possibly have. The challenge is all of these things, all of the things that are coming at us can be incredibly overwhelming and even exhausting, which makes it easier to avoid. Maybe you avoided this exercise for that reason. It was just one more thing you had to do. It was just one more thing on the list of things that you have to get accomplished that you felt you had to do. Maybe you didn't really want to look in the mirror. Maybe you knew you wouldn't like what you would see. Maybe you knew how it might make you feel or what emotions might come up. And you've gotten good at ignoring or avoiding those emotions because it's too much. You don't want to have to deal with those things. These are some of the reasons that you might have avoided doing the exercise in the first place. For those of you that did do the exercise, let's go into a few of the common examples so we can take the exercise a little bit deeper and see what some of the most common initial reactions are. First of all, before we get into some of the possible reactions, I want you to remember that there really was no right or wrong answer. In fact, if you didn't do it, I don't want you to actually feel bad about that. I just want you to be aware of your choice not to do it. And for those of you that did, no matter what came up, there's nothing right or wrong. Everybody's experience is different, and everybody's likely to have a different experience and different thoughts come up. If we were doing this exercise together and we were in a room together, I would be asking you all to share or give some of your examples. Since we can't do that as part of an online program, I've decided to share just a few common examples or examples that might have come up. That doesn't mean they did for you, but they serve the purpose of giving you an example and helping you to see how these challenges occur, how these things get in the way of us making time for self-awareness. So one of the first things that might have come up is that when you looked at your reflection, you noticed that you felt a bit uncomfortable. And maybe you had thoughts like, you look tired, or my hair doesn't look good today, or man, I really need to lose weight, or I don't like something about myself. But in some way, it was critical. In some way, you were criticizing yourself. And even though I told you only to observe and not judge, you likely had some sort of judging based thought. Some sort of evaluation. I should have brushed my hair. How come I didn't put on makeup today? I need to shave. Some thought about yourself came into the picture. And that's really common. It's common to have some of these thoughts when we're observing ourselves. And it's important to recognize that many of these thoughts actually stem from societal standards and expectations. But it's our avoidance of these thoughts that prevents us from looking, that prevents us from looking at or understanding why we're thinking that way. Maybe you started to focus on or get fixated on your flaws. Maybe you were focused on some skin imperfections or the weight that you need to lose. And it becomes challenging to accept the things that maybe you don't like about yourselves. It's one of the reasons that often people that don't like the way they look will avoid mirrors, will actually avoid looking into mirrors because they don't want to have to see and acknowledge some part of themselves. And it's totally understandable that when we do look, that we may be focused on the things that are flaws. What's important is that we have to learn to have the self-compassion and non-judgment, to shift ourselves out of thinking that way and have the awareness to say, that thought doesn't have to be true. I don't have to judge myself in that way. Let's shift now a little bit to your internal experience. So when you closed your eyes and you reflected on your perception of yourself, what did you feel? What happened there? What were those feelings or that mix of emotions that came up? Oftentimes there's some positive and there's some negative. There's often a sense of vulnerability or self-consciousness. And maybe you felt you need to be kinder. Maybe you realized that you were judging yourself too much when you were looking in the mirror, or maybe you felt like you needed to work harder to change who you are in some way. Whatever the emotions are that came up, just acknowledging and accepting them without judgment is an example of self-awareness, and it's an important part of the self-awareness journey. Now let's discuss the last part of the exercise where we practice self-compassion and judgment. How did that feel? Oftentimes, embracing self-compassion and embracing that feeling of non-judgment can be really challenging. We can feel self conscious, and that can get in the way of our giving ourselves compassion. We have a tendency to give compassion to others in abundance, but a difficulty giving it to ourselves. And so we have to learn to embrace that self compassion, even though it's difficult. But with practice, we strengthen those neural pathways, and over time, we can actually become more self compassionate with ourselves. Now, let's just hit on for a moment how these challenges with self awareness actually impact our relationship with ourselves and us overall. When we have these critical thoughts, when we have this feeling of self-consciousness and the focus on flaws, it creates unnecessary stress, and that starts to impact us. It impacts us on from a health perspective, and our self-esteem and our energy and how we feel towards ourselves. So the more that we can cultivate self-awareness and practicing this self-compassion, the more we're going to actually enhance our overall mental and emotional health. Hopefully, that exercise allowed you to begin to see some of the challenges that come up when it comes to self awareness. And as we look at these challenges that people have that prevent us and prevent them from having greater self awareness, it's important to recognize that self awareness is that guide on our lifelong journey, and that it's really not a destination. If we go back to the 4 stages of performance that start with understanding, developing, achieving, and mastery, unlike other skills that we're capable of mastering and consistently performing at near perfect performance, self awareness is not something we ever truly master in the same way as other skills. So, for example, and just to walk you through the 4 stages of performance again, anytime we start a new role or job or challenge, or we have to learn something new, we're at that understanding stage. And we have to learn about ourselves and the expectations and start on that journey. And then over time, we're able to develop and grow our capabilities, learn new skills, obtain knowledge and experience that's going to help us perform better. Ultimately, we get to achieving, and with that strong set of capabilities, we can achieve bigger achievements and bigger goals and accomplish more with more enjoyment. And then ultimately, we get to that mastery level where we're at that near perfect performance where we've been able to achieve and consistently demonstrate operating at peak performance and accomplishing what we want to accomplish. Now, here's the difference. If you think about mastering a typical skill, for example, if we want to master presentation skills, being a good speaker, we can cultivate that talent. We can understand how to do it, develop the skill with lots of practice, achieve success by speaking on bigger stages, and ultimately master our ability to consistently perform at near perfect performance as a highly talented speaker. Whether we lose our job, get a divorce, have a child, or face another life challenge, we still possess our presentation skills. We don't lose them. As we'll learn in the next few lessons, understanding the concept of self awareness is far easier than mastering it. When we lose our job, get a divorce, have a child, or face another life challenge, our self awareness is likely to be impacted. Since as humans, we are constantly evolving and experiencing new situations, our self awareness is constantly being impacted by them, which means we must continuously be developing and growing our self awareness in response. Really, if you think about it, if we stop paying attention to and focusing on and growing our self awareness, because self awareness is about the present, we actually cease to possess it altogether. We cease to have that self awareness. Even those who understand self-awareness and understand its importance will often struggle with it when life's challenges get in the way. And this is why our mastery of self-awareness is not a journey with a clear beginning or ending. There is no destination nor achievement. Instead, self-awareness is what's guiding us through our life journey, assisting us in our relationships, decisions, and lives should we choose to grow and cultivate it. It is what will allow us to optimize our performance and enjoy the experiences we have on our performance journey. Self awareness is the most critical factor in your ability to optimize your performance. And the truth is that in life, there are challenges, and we are going to keep facing obstacles. We're going to keep encountering roadblocks and challenges in our lives that make self-awareness more difficult. So what happens when a boulder is blocking your path on your mountain journey? Or a river has flooded that you can't cross at that spot anymore. The environment and the terrain on our mountains can change, and when it does, we have to update our maps. We have to explore new ways to go and consider whether we have the resources necessary or need to pause on our journey. And just like the terrain can change on a mountain, our roles can and do change all the time. Rarely does a person stay at the top of a mountain for very long. Our environments change, our roles change, we become parents, we get new jobs, and when it does, we have to navigate around those challenges or hurdles. We have to consider the other routes and make good decisions about how to use our resources, understanding what state we're currently in, assessing and understanding and being aware of how we're doing on our performance journey. Likewise, there will often be situations where we have to climb a new mountain. Maybe we want to climb a new mountain. Maybe we want to take a new role. Maybe we were forced into it. Maybe we were downsized or we lost our job and we had to move to another organization or do something different. When this happens, we actually have to learn an entirely new map. We can't just use the old one. We have to learn not just the new role and its challenges, but we have to understand our self-awareness. We have to understand who we are in the context of that new environment, in the context of the new challenges, the new issues, the new capabilities that we have to learn and grow and evolve our way through. Learning a new role is an experience that inevitably impacts our self-awareness and ability to perform. As we learn to navigate a new role or a new mountain, we have to understand ourselves in the context of this new experience. We are ever changing, ever evolving beings, and therefore self awareness requires an ongoing dedication to continuously learning and relearning in the face of all of life's obstacles and challenges. When we face challenges in our lives or we change roles, self awareness is what helps us evaluate the experience and make good decisions. It's what guides us and directs us to the best next steps to take. Without it, we're walking blind through the wilderness. Now, here's the thing, the best way isn't usually the easy way. It is far easier to be ignorant to everything, to keep our head in the sand and avoid truly looking at ourselves. There are a variety of challenges that tend to keep people from focusing on and growing their self awareness. It's hard to get around the boulder and keep going up the mountain. It is far easier to give up and go back or just stay where we are. These are the things, these changes, these challenges are the things that keep people from evolving and growing. They're the things that get in the way of us continuing to move through and up our performance mountain. So let's get into what some of these examples are, what some of the things are that cause us to want to stick our head in the sand and be ignorant to and not look at ourselves the way that we need to in order to increase our self-awareness. The first one I want to talk about is fear of self-reflection. Engaging in self-reflection requires that we examine our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors with honesty and openness. But some people may fear confronting uncomfortable aspects of themselves, such as maybe they've made mistakes in the past, or they're insecure about something, or they have unresolved issues. All of these fears can create a resistance to taking the time and engaging in self-awareness, and they ultimately will hinder our personal growth. So maybe, for example, we don't want to admit what we see or how we behave. We don't want to admit that we yell at our kids and the impact that's having. We don't want to admit that maybe we are better able at believing our thoughts than facing what's causing them. It's easier to believe our story about the challenges in our lives than to actually face the truth of our part in that story, of our contribution to that conflict, to that challenge, or to that issue that we're facing in our lives. Another challenge that I see probably the most is that many of us and many people go through life on autopilot. There is so many things coming at us that it's difficult to stay fully present in the present moment. We become preoccupied with our worries, our distractions, or the external stimuluses which prevent us from being introspective and gaining self-awareness. The nature of the world that we live in today, of modern life and the constant digital distractions, are contributing to this overall lack of mindfulness. Our world has never changed as fast as it is changing today. I could list dozens of quotes and statistics on the rate of change that we're experiencing. In a world with so much, staying mindless or allowing ourselves to be distracted by the infinite ways we have at our disposal to distract ourselves may be far more comfortable than actually looking inward, than dealing with the pain or the challenges or the beliefs or the things that we would prefer not to become aware of. In fact, when in conflict with others or after a difficult or challenging day, I have to admit, I easily turn towards binging a Netflix show or scrolling on TikTok or finding some other way to numb myself rather than address that internal issue, rather than face my part in it or face my part in an argument or a conflict. The harder path, the path that requires growth and evolution, is self-awareness. And it's far easier to choose mindfulness than it is to choose self-awareness. Another example of the challenges is having limited emotional awareness. Emotions play a huge role in self-awareness, but many individuals struggle with identifying and understanding their emotions. If you're one of them, don't feel bad about it because it's far more common than you realize. This is often due to our societal conditioning that actually discourages the expression of emotion and tends to perpetuate a lack of emotional intelligence skills in general. But the problem is without emotional awareness, we may struggle to accurately gauge our reactions and motivations. We may not be able to tap into what's happening and why it's happening. You know, we've all probably heard comments growing up like, stop crying. There's no reason. You don't need to cry. You need to be happy. You're too loud. You're too much. You're too excited. There are tons of examples of ways that we've tried to suppress or ignore emotions as society. You know, workplaces, for example, have said for a long time, leave your personal life and your emotions at home. Often, when we're referring to emotions, we refer to them as the soft stuff, when truly emotions are one of the hardest things to talk about, and dealing with them is far more challenging than it is to just simply ignore them. Sometimes we might be afraid that if we open up our emotions, if we let ourselves feel and process them, that they might actually overwhelm us. And so that's the reason that we stuff them away and we push them away for another day, a day that often never comes. And there's a lot of risk in and vulnerability in acknowledging and sharing our emotions of what we're experiencing. If a boss is overly critical, hostile, or maybe even harassing you, it's hard to confront them rather than just suck up your emotion, hold it in, or allow that emotion to be released maybe on your unsuspecting spouse or partner who is not the source of the emotion. These are all some of the reasons that a limited emotional awareness is preventing us from looking inward, from becoming more self-aware. Society often places emphasis on external validation, achievement, and comparison to others. As a result, some individuals may prioritize meeting social expectations or conforming to social norms over developing self-awareness. They may tend to rely heavily on others' opinions or even define their self-worth based on external markers of success, which can hinder their own authentic self-discovery or understanding of themselves. As I began on my own journey of self-discovery and awareness, and I began to share my struggles with that, I learned that most people experience at least one of the many types of limiting beliefs and fears created by the need for approval or by comparing ourselves to others. Most people are suffering under those societal standards and struggling with that need for comparison. or external validation. As children, we're compared to our peers. We get tested and graded to determine if we measure up. We learn early who's good at sports and friends and who is not. We seek approval from others and try to find a place to belong. In the US culture in particular, everything is built upon succeeding, getting more and better. More money, cars, houses, stuff, better jobs, family, and lives. We're constantly striving to outdo others. Although the more dangerous version of this is when we are constantly trying to overachieve ourselves, to reach some place that actually doesn't really exist so that one day we can feel satisfied. When in reality, we're always going to want to overachieve or outachieve our performance. When we focus on these external measures, it keeps us distracted from turning inwards and looking in at ourselves, where we can get our worth and validation from our internal sense of ourselves rather than needing to get our worth and validation from others. As I mentioned earlier, developing self awareness requires self compassion and non judgment. We have to be willing to engage and look at our thoughts without allowing them to stick, without absorbing those judgments. And often people struggle with self criticism, negative self talk, and high self expectations. They have harsh self judgment that creates a resistance to self awareness. If I don't like myself, if I'm going to judge myself, if I'm going to point out all of my flaws and mistakes, why do I want to look closer at myself? The truth is, we're rarely modeled on self compassion. There's plenty of compassion out there for others. We see it in abundance. Care about a person who's struggling, offer support and kindness and understanding. But to ourselves, we can be downright evil. Some of my favorite social media videos are talking about how no one can be meaner to us than the thoughts that and the voices that are in our own heads. The ones that tell us that constantly tell us we aren't good enough, we need to be better, and we failed, the ones that just never stop criticizing us. In fact, we are often far more critical of ourselves than anyone else is ever critical of us. The last example is the unconscious patterns, biases, and blind spots that can hinder self awareness. These ingrained habits and ways of thinking may operate and often operate beneath our conscious awareness. We don't even know that we have this issue or that we impact people in a particular way, which makes it really difficult for individuals to recognize and address them. We have to be willing to seek feedback from trusted sources and engage in reflective practices that can help uncover these blind spots and unconscious patterns. If we don't believe that there's any self we need to look at, if we refuse to recognize that there are things about ourselves that we don't know yet, then we allow ourselves to avoid looking inward. And this is really true when people have a conceptual sense of self awareness, but they lack embodied self awareness and therefore are totally blind to their behaviors that may be an issue for them or others. And so, if people don't take time to look, or if they think that they can't possibly have a blind spot or an unconscious pattern, that is going to stand in the way of them doing the practices that are necessary in order to have self awareness and become aware of those challenges or those issues. I know that I keep saying this, but I want to note again that self awareness is a lifelong journey, and everyone has their own unique challenges and barriers to overcome. Developing self awareness requires patience, self compassion, and a willingness to engage in introspection and self reflection. Overcoming these obstacles and nurturing self awareness can lead to personal growth, authenticity, and a deeper understanding of yourself. I want you to take a few minutes now, and in your workbook, we've got space for this self reflection exercise to capture what challenges resonated the most with you. What are your challenges with self awareness? What is it that keeps you from looking more at yourself? What is it that keeps you from looking more at yourself with compassion and non judgment? Take some time to reflect on your own experience here and where you maybe identified with some of the challenges that might be getting in your way. I have yet to find someone that has fully mastered self awareness and is fully conscious of and has no challenges with looking in at themselves. So I'm confident that you will come up with some of the challenges that are getting in your way today. One of the other ways outside of the challenges we've already talked about is that in order to avoid self-awareness, we look to others to tell us what to do or think or feel, act or behave. We start doing what we're told, regardless of whether it's right for us or not. It's when we start to ask others for directions or to tell us what to do and where to go and how to do it. This is where there becomes this just abundance of self help gurus, each with their unique proven method, which clearly works for some but rarely works for most. Unfortunately, this approach doesn't work in the long term because what works or is wise for one person doesn't necessarily work for another. I saw this often with managers who would be unable to change their behaviors in the ways necessary to create lasting change. They knew what to do, they knew why to do it, and some even really wanted to do it, but they still struggled. And you know what? I'll even admit that in some areas, as a manager, as a leader, I still struggled. I knew I had researched, I had done all the things. So why couldn't I change some of those behaviors? What you'll discover is that unless we can access our own inner insights and our own inner experiences that have created that barrier, created that limitation, prevented us from taking action where we want to take action, and understand how to really use our brains and bodies, our map for our mountain, if we don't do that, we are left relying on others to give us directions on our journey. And the problem is that their directions may or may not be right for us in our journey. Their directions may lead us to stick our head back in the sand just to follow and be like the rest of the pack, to be like and do as everyone else is doing. It actually takes a unique amount of courage and commitment to be willing to look at your unique lifelong journey, your past and current experiences, in order to help you live and in order to help you navigate your life journey and your performance mountain. We have to take the time to learn how to use our map to navigate our journey and not just follow the pack, not just do as others tell us to do. What you're going to find throughout this course is that we actually have a number of different exercises for you to do, and they may actually feel a little repetitive, and that is actually on purpose because we want you to start to get more comfortable with this reflection and this looking inward and this activity of understanding where you are and rating yourself. So there's a self-awareness assessment in your workbook. It's not long. It's just 5 areas. And I want you just to take some time again, just to get reflective and look at where you are right now.